everybody, thanks for joining us on this Q&A session. After our webinar last week, we had a massive number of questions come through. So today you've got myself. I am Charlotte Stockman. I'm a licensed advisor with New Zealand Shores. We're also joined by my colleague Sarah, who is a licensed advisor. And then we've also got Prudence from Accent Health Recruitment. So you'll recognise two of our faces from last week, but Sarah's just jumped in to help us. She's asking the questions and we're answering them for you. So yeah, when you're ready, Sarah.
Thanks, Charlotte. We have a ton of questions, so we're going to try and really quickly cover off as much as we can. So I'll throw some at you, Charlotte, and we'll get the visa questions out of the road first, and then over to you, Pro, for the second half. So, all right. So first question, Charlotte, we got was, can you give us a very, very quick answer on the cost of New Zealand Shores for the migration process?
Easy one is everyone needs to get an individual quote, mostly because no two people are the same, no two families are the same, and the work involved is never the same across each person or family. So yeah, unfortunately, not a straightforward answer, but get in touch and we can give you a quote.
Okay, awesome. And what are the advantages of using New Zealand Shores as a company versus sort of trying to navigate it and work it out yourself?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of the people we are reaching out to with this question and answer session, you will all be highly intelligent individuals. There is every chance you would be able to do this yourselves. The benefit of using a company like New Zealand Shores is that we, especially post-COVID, we have learnt this process. There is now quite often 3 steps to get people into New Zealand and get them on the appropriate visas. So we know what's required at each step of that process, and we can take care of that for you. Whereas if you're not 100% sure on what the process is, or if you're just trying to navigate through the Immigration New Zealand website, you might not quite be successful. The Immigration New Zealand website doesn't necessarily give you all the information you need to know.
Next question, how many times can you renew your visa before applying for residence?
Effectively, indefinitely. You can renew it as many times as you need to. Everyone in this group won't have any issues with that. Typically, residence for people who we are speaking to today would be processed within generally 4 to 6 months. You would all receive prioritisation in terms of processing. So it's likely you'd actually only need 1 work visa.
Awesome. And I'm not sure if you can answer this one. Ambulance workers, EMTs, are they considered critical health workers for the sake of getting an essential skills work visa?
They are, in terms of immigration policy, they are considered critical healthcare workers. They are on immigration's list. However, they aren't necessarily going to get a job. And I know I've had conversations with Prue around this. Whilst yes, immigration says they can enter, they might not get a job due to the way our sort of ambulance service works. So worth reaching out to one of us directly to have that chat.
Okay, awesome. This question's with regards to psychiatric mental health. So nurse practitioners in that field, are they classed as essential workers?
Yes, they are, yeah.
Awesome. Next question, is the border open for medical radiation technicians?
Yes, if they can get a job.
Okay, awesome. Next question, does a partner have to be legally married, or can a domestic partnership be accepted when migrating to New Zealand?
Yeah, so marriage isn't the only form of a genuine and stable relationship immigration accepts. So if you aren't married, don't worry about it. What they are looking for is, are you living together in a genuine and stable relationship? And we can help you to work through the documents required to support that.
Okay. Next question, I'm not sure if this will be Charlotte or Pro, but do you only help with short-term placements or also long-term placements that could potentially lead to citizenship?
I think that's definitely Prue.
Yeah, look, hi, I'm Prue or Prudence from Accent Health Recruitment. I've been recruiting now for 25 years and still love my job, which is fabulous. Yes, we do recruit to short-term positions, and it's mainly a 12-month position plus. It does take a long time to get here, isolate, get over your jet lag, and understand a lot about the New Zealand health system. So it's usually 12 months. We may consider 6 months, but 12 months and longer, and you can get a visa for either, and NZ Shores can help with that.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Pro. Back to you, Charlotte. Are school fees free on a temporary visa?
Yes, all children will attend school as domestic students. So they pay a small donation, but you're not paying international fees.
Yeah. How long would a healthcare worker's visa last for?
So it's 3 years, and that can, of course, like I said, you can apply for further visas if you need to. Majority of the people in this group will be eligible to apply for residence and then move through to citizenship.
Thank you. So this next question is about partnership visas. So if the principal applicant is a critical worker and they come over to New Zealand, their partner, will they get an open work visa straight away?
Yes, absolutely they will. They will be granted an open partnership work visa for the same duration as the principal applicant.
Okay, awesome. Someone had a question about the borders opening for healthcare professionals with a job. The email said that that was until the 31st of December. What's happening after the 31st of December?
So we're expecting that date will be extended. Immigration has done so at least once already. So initially it was up until the 31st of August, and then we saw them extend that again till the 31st of December. So we're hoping we get some communication about that over the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you. What if someone's current employers don't know they're going to be immigrating? Is that a problem?
I'm sure Prue can add on to whatever I talk about here. From an immigration perspective, we don't contact your current employment. So quite often a lot of our clients won't actually tell, their current employer until they've got a job offer and they're ready to, jump on a plane. But yeah, I'm sure Prudence can jump in and just explain how that works from their side as well.
Will depend on the employer. The employer might want to contact your current manager or your line manager before the interview, after the interview, or at job offer stage. Very likely before you accept the job, your employer will be contacted because they need a current reference just to see how you're going to blend and fit in with the team.
So, but that's sort of, near the end of the process, I'm guessing. It's not, before they know.
Correct.
For the role. Yeah, awesome.
Yep.
Okay, back to you, Charlotte. Are there any changes to the immigration process if someone has had COVID?
No, so everyone coming into the country has to go into 2 weeks of managed isolation, which the government sets up. You don't have to arrive with a negative COVID test. So if you've had COVID previously, it doesn't stop you from entering New Zealand. Our government's main focus is to ensure that you are actually COVID-free when you leave managed isolation. So you will have tests during that period of managed isolation. And then you'll have a test on day 3, and I think it's day 12. And as long as that day 12 test is negative, you'll be able to leave managed isolation.
Okay, awesome. Are you able to give a very quick overview of the differences between a work to resident visa and an essential skills work visa?
Yeah, so a work to residence visa can be applied for under 2 circumstances. One is that the employer is accredited. So that means that the government has given them special provisions to hire migrants from offshore without demonstrating that there's New Zealanders available for the role. So yes, a lot of district health boards in New Zealand are accredited, but not all of them are. The other criteria is that if your occupation is on the long-term skills shortage list, which some healthcare professionals are. So under those 2 circumstances, we would apply for what's called a work to residence work visa. It allows a second path to residence. So you can apply for residence from work after having been on that work to residence visa for 24 months. An essential skills work visa is applied from the basis of what I call a standard employer, which is probably like 90% of employers in New Zealand. And that's a 3-year work visa, and you would have to, it doesn't give you a direct path to residence, but you would be eligible to apply for residence under the skilled migrant category.
Awesome, thanks, Charlotte. Are there any restrictions migrating to New Zealand as a general practitioner due to COVID?
No, no restrictions. They are able to get critical healthcare work visas.
Yeah, awesome. What are the challenges facing the immigration process given COVID-19, restrictions, predictions on how things will happen over the coming year?
It's a little bit hard to speak to as to what's going to happen over the next 12 months. But I think for healthcare workers, it's not really going to change too much. Our border became restricted in March, and healthcare workers have been continuously entering since that point. So it's highly likely that that will continue through the course of 2021 as well.
So what are the age limits?
For a work visa, there is no age limit at all. So you could, even if you're past New Zealand's retirement age, you can still obtain a work visa and come to New Zealand and work. However, if you want to apply for residence, you do need to be under the age of 56. So you can apply for residence right up until the day you turn 56.
Awesome. Do you need to have a job offer before applying for a work visa?
Yes, easy question.
How do graduate degrees translate in New Zealand?
Oh, that's probably a prudence question, I think, that one.
Yeah, to work in New Zealand, you need can't work on associate's degree. For a nurse, you have to have a full degree, and it seems to be a 4-year degree is preferable, but it will depend on the occupation, but most likely you need to have a degree rather than associate's diploma.
Thanks, Pro. Charlotte, back to you. There are some changes being thrown around at the moment, predicting to be drawn up and come into effect next year regarding the new work visas. So are these going to affect healthcare professionals at all applying for residence?
Unlikely, no. There are some changes proposed where they are talking about basically combining 6 categories of work visa into one. So that would likely do away with the essential skills work visa and the work to residence work visa, and we'd likely see a new category introduced to cover everything. What that policy looks like, we don't know. It hasn't been released, so we can't talk to it yet. But it won't stop healthcare workers from applying for residence. There hasn't been any major changes announced to the skilled migrant category. So at this point in time, it's all business as usual.
Okay, awesome. Someone's asked a question about their age, and is that a considerable factor? I guess we can sort of direct this one to you as well, Pro, as Charlotte, but age, is that a factor in obtaining a visa and obtaining a job offer?
No, well, Charlotte can cover off the visa options, but for employment, we've employed a 70-year-old pathologist, 62-year-old midwife. As long as you're fit and well and New Zealand wants you, then we want you.
Thanks, Pro. Charlotte, I think we covered that question off in a previous question, didn't we?
I think so, yeah. No age limit on work visas, but under the age of 56 for residents.
Awesome. Charlotte, is there a detailed list or a definition of what constitutes a critical worker?
Yes, there is. On the Immigration New Zealand website, they have a whole section called COVID-19 updates. And under that, there is an extensive list specifically for healthcare workers, as well as other critical workers, which outlines who can and can't enter. So you'll find that on immigration.govt.nz.
What's the safest way to bring a pet with you when you're relocating, Charlotte?
I constantly joke that I migrate humans, not animals, so I can't really talk on that, but there is plenty of information available. I would talk to your local vet, and I would Google moving pets to New Zealand. There's a lot of information on the Customs New Zealand website, so check out those resources.
There's lots of pet shoppers out there, aren't there?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, from my perspective, moving pets is really, really important and often can be quite expensive, but moving pets, there's a lot of really awesome pet movers, and we find that pets move exceptionally well and they love being in New Zealand because New Zealand's so animal friendly.
Yeah, we definitely are. I think most people have a cat or a dog, don't they? Charlotte, regarding a student visa for someone wanting to become a nurse, is that an option right now, or has this been impacted with the pandemic at all?
Yeah, so at the moment, the only option in terms of entering to do any study as a nurse is for the CAP program. At the moment, if you're wanting to come and study a Bachelor of Nursing, the border isn't open as of yet for students.
Okay, fingers crossed that's going to change soon, eh? Someone's question here, my primary degree was in English. but I completed my master's degree in English. Will this be necessary to write an IELTS before I'm allowed to register with the New Zealand Board of Physiotherapy?
Oh, Prudence, that's you, I think.
Yeah. To work in New Zealand as a physiotherapist, it depends where your country of origin, where you did your training, whether English was a first language or not. So you may or may not have to sit an IELTS. If you have studied in English and working, teaching, learning in English, you probably don't have to sit the IELTS test.
Okay, awesome. So predominantly based on, the country domiciled for.
Yes. Yeah.
So Charlotte, next question. Do I need to apply for a work visa before arriving in New Zealand, or do I get one once I arrive and secure a position?
So you'll need to initially secure a job offer. Once a job is secured, we apply for what's called a border exemption request. Those are approved within about 2 to 3 days. After that, we then apply for a critical purpose visitor visa, and that's approved to the person with the job plus their family if they're traveling with family. And then once you are on shore, that's when we actually apply for what I would call your proper work visas. So yeah, you don't necessarily enter New Zealand on a work visa, but you will be able to apply for a work visa once you are here.
Okay, and that's just the situation at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Given COVID.
All COVID related, yeah.
Okay, how long on average does it take for a visa to process?
So I'm finding that the border exemptions and the critical healthcare visitor visas are taking generally about 2 to 3 weeks at most. Once you're onshore and we apply for your work visas, they're also processing really quickly. So we're kind of seeing like a 2 to 4 week turnaround on those.
Okay, awesome. Another question about spouses. So if you've got a healthcare professional who gets a work visa, will their spouse also be able to work even if they're not in healthcare?
Yes, absolutely. They don't need to be in healthcare.
Okay, awesome. Next question. Someone here is waiting for preliminary advice for vocational scope registration. How can this person perhaps make use of their time?
From an immigration perspective, what you can be doing is you can be working on your documentation to become document ready, so that when your registration does come through, if it's approved, you're in a position to start working with Accent Health to actually secure a job offer. That's sort of where we look at it from our side, but Prudence probably has a different approach as well for her clients.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about the 3 Ps, planning, preparation and paperwork, and there's a lot you can do 1 year out from starting the process, and a lot of the documents that you need ready will be useful for recruitment and also immigration. So never too early to start collecting that paperwork.
Awesome, thanks Pro. And segue now, we're going to move over to you. So let's start off with some registration questions. Are you helping in the council registration?
Yeah, Accent Health Recruitment takes you through the whole registration process, regardless of your occupation. We need to go through and verify documents with EPIC or CG-FNS. We need to get copies of documents ourselves, references and forms filled in. It's quite a lengthy process and needs to be done before you start the job interview stage.
Okay, awesome. Does New Zealand registration require English language tests?
You only need an English language test if you're from a country where English is not a first or a strong language. For example, you can get exempt if you're from South Africa, if Afrikaans isn't your first language. From Singapore, you can get exempt because you speak English on a daily basis. So it will depend on your country of origin where you trained.
Yeah, awesome. Would you recommend someone trying to secure a job before they have their registration, let's say with the nursing board?
You need to get registration before you get a job. A lot of employers won't interview you unless you have full registration in New Zealand. So get registration before the job.
Contacting. Okay. Is it common for employers to reimburse applicants for their registration fees?
No, it's not common. You need to make that investment and get your registration first.
Okay. Next one, does Accent as a company offer a registration review before it's sent in?
Yeah, we do. We offer to have a look at your scanned documents to make sure your registration is all fully, comprehensively and really well done. All the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So we will look at your registration before it gets sent away. And we don't charge you anything for this. All we ask is commitment just to work with one of us.
Okay, awesome. This next question, just bear with me here. What is the likelihood of success for a favourable outcome in preliminary advice for IMG who's training and experience from a developing country, for example, Egypt? Does that make sense?
Yep, low. IMGs, international medical graduates, need to come from a comparable health system, and I can list the comparable health systems if you contact me individually, but Egypt is not listed as a comparable health system.
Okay. This is regarding occupational therapists. So can you give us a very quick overview of registration, timeframes, costs involved, job opportunities?
Job opportunities for OTs are very, very plentiful, whether that's working in corporate, in the hospital, community, psychiatric, and vocational rehab. OTs are really popular. We love British and American OTs, OTs from all around the world. The registration process is quite individualised depending on what country you come from, and we will take you through the process of gaining registration in New Zealand.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, bro. Just last on this topic. So what's the process and cost for converting a UK physio qualification?
The process is lengthy. It takes 3 or 4 months to go through and collect. You have to write 10 competencies with all the body types, so respiratory, cardiology, musculoskeletal, neuro. You have to cover 10 body systems. It is quite involved, the physio registration. I'm afraid they're the toughest out of everyone. Their process does take about 6 months, so we recommend that you start the registration process early. Costs about $1,000 New Zealand dollars.
Awesome.
But it's worth it because physios are very sought after in New Zealand.
Yeah, we've got a lot of clients coming through, don't we? Charlotte is physios at the moment. Move on to some quick fire answers now. So regarding nurses and nurse practitioners, what nurse specialties are most in demand at the moment?
The nurse specialties in demand at the moment are mental health, emergency, operating theatre, some highly specialised orthopaedic, rehab, and again, psychiatric and mental health. We've got a great need because there's a lot of funding in New Zealand into mental health.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so bear with me on this question. I'm a certified hospice and palliative nurse, certification from the Hospice Nurse Association in the US. This person's looking through employment listings and sees requirements for hospice positions requiring additional training and certification in New Zealand. Is this going to be an issue for them with regards to an application?
No, employers in New Zealand look at your qualifications individually, and you certainly sound like being a certified hospice nurse. There will be a need in New Zealand. Again, we've got a growing population, ageing population in New Zealand, and a great demand for hospice as well.
Okay, so here we go. Next one, Singapore nurse currently working in general wards. Is it better to be in a specialty area in order to be offered a job?
Yes, specialty areas are more sought after, for example, mental health and operating theatres.
Okay, thanks. This next one, would we be able to discuss more about the process for nurse practitioners? I understand you have to apply initially as a registered nurse and then you apply for a NP, nursing practitioner after you've arrived.
Yes, so when you apply to New Zealand to work as a nurse practitioner, first you get general registration and you have to have 4 years experience having worked in your area. For example, if you want to be a nurse practitioner in family medicine, you have to have worked at least 4 years as a nurse practitioner in family medicine. When you get to New Zealand, you come on general registration and then you apply for nurse practitioner status.
Okay, so that sounds like it's answered the next question, which was talking about, have you placed any nurse practitioners?
Yes, we have, from America. Yep.
And they do have full practice and prescriber authority, do they?
It comes down to an individual employment agreement with the employer as to what the nurse practitioner can prescribe and treatment, etc.
Okay, awesome. Is ER nursing and ICU nursing a critical need in New Zealand?
Yes, we need ICU and ER nurses.
Thank you. Are certain specialities in which nursing experience is more valued?
Yeah, mental health, theatre. They're probably the two top areas at the moment for in demand in New Zealand.
Okay, and what about those other healthcare professionals? So certified nurse assistants, medical assistants, home health aides, licensed?
Yeah, probably not at this. Sorry, Sarah. We're probably looking at registered nurses. We can't assist physician assistants. We can't assist nurse aides or home care assistants or operating theatre or surgical assists.
Thank you. Does New Zealand accept registered nurses that have worked primarily out of the hospital, but in long-term care, disabilities and correctional healthcare?
Absolutely. We have correctional and long-term healthcare nurses.
Okay. And what's the process for current nursing students outside of New Zealand? Do those classes transfer over, or would they need a student visa?
Well, with immigration at the moment, we're not taking student visas. That's probably a question for Charlotte, but you need 2 years postgrad experience to be able to work in New Zealand.
Okay, thank you. Do you have advanced practice nurses, such as certified registered nurse anaesthetists or similar?
Yes, we do. We love speaking to certified nurses and advanced nurse practitioners.
Okay, thank you. This person's heard that there's an age maximum for RNs and nurse practitioners when they come to New Zealand. Is this true?
There's not an age as such. There is from a residency point of view, but we welcome all nurses to contact us and we look at every application individually.
Yeah. Next question, what's the salary like for an intensive care nurse in Christchurch, and what's the average nurse salary in New Zealand?
The average nurse salary would be $72,800. That would be with someone with 5 years experience, and there'd be a shift allowance on top of that. So you earn up to about 100,000 New Zealand dollars. And that's actually a really comfortable salary for New Zealand.
Thank you. This person's a registered nurse who specialises in informatics. What's their job opportunities like?
You're more likely to get a job in New Zealand in the clinical setting rather than informatics.
Thank you. Can Accent help with obtaining clinical research positions?
We wouldn't look at clinical research positions. We'd look more at hospital and community positions.
Okay, thank you. What type of shift work is offered to most nurses?
Yeah, every ward's different, every department's different, and then even if you work in the wards, you can choose. So it's usually 7 till 3, 3 to 7, 11 till 7. Some of the wards, like intensive care and theatre, do 12-hour shifts, some do 10-hour shifts. You also have twilight shifts in the afternoon for working mothers. So it will depend, and that can be discussed at the time of the interview.
Thank you. Can this person look for employment as a registered nurse and a family nurse practitioner at the same time?
Yes, you can look at both opportunities, and you can work as a registered nurse while your nurse practitioner status gets processed.
Thank you. This person completed their degree in nursing from the UK. Is there a need for them to undertake an English language test?
No, if you've done your degree in nursing from the UK, it's very unlikely that you'd have to sit an English language test.
Thank you. What's the general requirements for South African nurses wanting to work in New Zealand?
South African nurses have to have a degree and have worked in a large hospital. That's the requirement by the New Zealand Nurses Council. They may have to sit IELTS or prove that they've got a waiver from the IELTS, but they need 5 years postgrad experience, not so much in a general setting, more theatre, intensive care, mental health.
Thank you. Nurses experienced in managing COVID and being part of the COVID response, are they potentially in higher demand?
Well, interesting, we haven't got COVID in New Zealand, so we don't need all the wonderful skills that you've picked up in intensive care and respiratory and critical care that you would have picked up. We have so many nurses that contact us and say, I've been working in ICU, I can do intubation, this, that, and the next thing. But thank goodness we don't need it in New Zealand at this stage.
So, Pro, we're just going to zip over to doctors now. Quick fire questions. Orthopedic surgeon, lives in the US, has an ECFMG certificate, but educated in Turkey. How can they look for a job in New Zealand?
Someone who's got mixed education and experience would come down the comparable pathway for medical counsel, and they would need 36 months having worked in the US and ideally board certification.
Thank you. This person wants more information for medical residency specialisation for becoming a paediatrician in a New Zealand hospital after graduating from medical school. It's a bit of a long one.
Yeah, we need doctors who are working at specialist or consultant level, having completed their residency in the US, got their fellowship and are board certified.
Okay, so how does a US doctor, their training transfer to New Zealand if they're certified?
Very well. Doctors from the US, as long as they're board certified and have got good comparable experience, we welcome them to New Zealand.
Okay, this person's a vascular and interventional radiologist. They don't see that on your recruitment portion of Accent recruitment website. Are they able to be?
Absolutely. Radiologists are very sought after. Interventional and vascular radiology is something that we have vacancies for, and we'd be keen to start dialogue.
Okay, thank you. A doctor of osteopathy, trained in an MD residence in the US. Are they acceptable for licensing?
Yes, we accept the doctor of osteopathy.
Okay.
I will just jump in there. Osteopaths are also on the list of critical healthcare workers who can enter. So whilst it might not seem like your typical healthcare worker that's needed for any sort of COVID response or healthcare response, New Zealand is still allowing them to enter.
Thanks, Charlotte. Next question, Pro. This person wants to know about the processes for different medical specialties.
Yeah, so all pediatricians, surgeons, psychiatrists, GPs, no matter what you are, you still get assessed in the same way, have to submit the same paperwork, same reference checking. So yes, the process is almost identical.
Thank you. With the number of GPs from the US and the UK applying for jobs at the moment, is there still a need for GPs?
Yes, we have a great need for GPs and a growing need for GPs in New Zealand, both in the rural and urban settings.
What about from a country like Germany?
Yes, we accept doctors from Germany. There's a list of about 17 comparable health systems that I'm happy to share if people want to contact me directly.
Thank you. This person wants to know if they require additional skills assessment on their qualification as a physiotherapist.
Yes.
It would depend on the physiotherapy training they've done and the experience that they have.
Yeah, from an immigration perspective, I have actually just been through this recently with a client that myself and a colleague have been working with. And in terms of immigration, the obtaining registration with the physiotherapy board wasn't sufficient to claim points for their qualification. So immigration has actually requested them to go through the NZQA process. They were trained in the US as well. So yeah, it could be case by case, but that is just our recent experience. So it might be a situation where we have to look at you closer.
Okay, this person's a physiotherapist in the Philippines. They'd like to know what are the requirements for their for their qualification in order to practice here in New Zealand.
It would be up to the physio registration board in New Zealand. It's unlikely that a physio from the Philippines would get.
Okay, thanks, Bro. This person's interested in the process involved to work as an anesthesiologist in Wellington, searching for jobs and obtaining New Zealand medical license.
Yeah, jobs in anesthesiology or working as an anaesthetist in New Zealand, there's not a lot of jobs around. I've recruited a lot, but you have to wait for the right job to come up that is comparable to your experience, whether you're working as an intensivist in theatre or in pain management. We'd have to look at your application individually.
Thanks, Bro. Is a paediatric specialist considered a critical purpose?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Right, quick 5 questions about medical technologists. Okay, does Accent House recruit ambulance workers?
No.
Out of that question, but yeah, no. Okay. Do you employ or recruit medical technologists?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any entry exams for radiographers?
No.
Okay. Is there a registration board for radiology and technologists?
Yes, it's the Medical Sciences Board for radiation therapists and radiographers, diagnostic or therapeutic to join.
Thank you. I wonder if medical sonographers need to get different certification.
No, they get the same certification through the Medical Sciences Board.
Okay, thank you. Need to know about nuclear medicine and radiology jobs for doctors.
Yes, there are jobs available for nuke med specialists and also in radiology.
Moving on to psychologists and therapists, Pro, is it possible to get a job offer as a psychologist?
Yes, psychologists are very much in demand in education, corrections and hospital settings.
Okay, what about before they've got their registration approved?
No, they need registration first.
Okay, thank you. And I think you've answered this previously. Accent, do they have experience on placing mental health workers?
Yes, we've got a high demand for psychiatric mental health, whether it's alcohol and drug, family, forensics, rehab, adult, older persons, very much in demand.
How many years experience is generally required for occupational therapists?
OTs need at least 2 years experience to work in New Zealand.
Okay, that's post study.
Post registration.
Okay. This person's just qualified as a mental health social worker. They were previously a pharmacist and now works for the NHS Mental Health Trust. This person wants to know, are they likely to be hired in New Zealand with 1 year experience rather than 2 if they relocated end of next year?
Having undergraduate experience in a similar medical field, yes, you're likely to get registration in New Zealand and a job.
Okay, thanks, Pro. That's the end of sort of those specific questions. Charlotte, we'll pull you back in just for some general questions here. What happens to outstanding student debt once you move to New Zealand? This is from a US physician who has a large medical loan.
Yeah, so from an immigration perspective, they're not interested in what debt you have. At no point do we have to provide evidence of that. Obviously, when you took out that loan, you would have had, requirements of when you have to pay it back and how you have to pay it back. So that's really an issue for you to sort with your loan provider rather than a immigration, or I would assume even most employers wouldn't even think about it. So that's something for you to look at and discuss how you're going to handle that.
Thanks, Charlotte. This person says they've been traveling as a locus. I think they mean locum in the US. So they just like to know, do we need each place of work when it comes to information given to immigration? And I suppose for you, Pro, as well, for the registration board, are they going to need to know about each of those?
Yes, to work in New Zealand, we do need to have a list of all the locum placements that you've had. It's really important.
Thank you. This person's asking about the cost of living in New Zealand. It's a very broad question. Charlotte, do you have some answer there?
Yes, this person has also commented on the fact that New Zealand is an island, so things have to be transported there. We're not some tiny little Pacific island that has irregular shipping or anything like that. We are really no different to any other first world country in that regard. Cost of living varies. There's no clear-cut answer. Everyone has different lifestyles, different expectations. Some people, it's one single person. Some people have a family of 5. So there are calculators on the New Zealand government website, New Zealand Now. So if you Google cost of living in New Zealand calculator, there will be something that will pop up and you can work that out to what you and your family specifically need.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I know a lot of our South African clients, they need to take into also account, New Zealand has a lower tax rate. There's not the costs of medical care, end of schooling. So there are factors to take into account as well when you're determining that. This person wants to know about bringing their parents either at the same time or can they only come after they've relocated?
That's also not necessarily a straightforward answer. There are 2 categories that your parents can migrate under. It's probably best to reach out to New Zealand Shores directly to talk about your unique circumstances so we can provide you with some more information about those processes.
Thanks, Charlotte. And this person's asking about where to find information about schools and childcare. Again, perhaps they can reach out to us, or you got a specific resource?
Yeah, we have a list of schools, whether it's Steiner and Waldorf, public, private schooling, childcare. We've got a document that sort of covers off everything. I mean, I love the schooling in New Zealand. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Pro. I agree. Charlotte, I think that's us actually with questions.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining me, ladies. It's been really informative, and we really hope that that's answered some of those, regularly asked questions that we saw come through during the webinar. Once again, if you have anything that's highly specific, whether it's recruitment related or migration related, please do reach out to Prudence at Accent Health, or feel free to get in touch with New Zealand Shores as well, and we will include our email addresses in a blurb attached with the video. So yeah, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks everyone. If you have any questions, you can email us directly. Contact easily to send back to you, so just send the questions to us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, we hope to chat with some of you soon.